Hey kiddos, so today we're going to dig into chapter 3 of The Lightning Thief. And I want you to remember that we're working on being able to analyze characters with their thoughts, feelings, actions, and speech to describe them. And remember, when we talk about our rubric, we're talking about being able to get a 3 on our rubric, which means that we're going to use precise language to describe them, and then we're going to back it up with text evidence. Okay, so what you're going to have in front of you is an excerpt. So there's going to be 4 questions that you're going to have to answer today. And that excerpt is going to have where you can answer the question. So I want you to reference that while we're working through these questions. Okay. So you read chapter 3 yesterday. Today is your day to jump in and kind of remember what you read. So yesterday you answered these questions, said describe Percy's relationship with his mother, use text evidence to support your answer. How does Percy feel about his father? Use text evidence to support your answer, and summarize the exciting events at the end of the chapter. Then predict what you think will happen next. So we're just going to kind of review these really quickly so that you're kind of on the same page. We kind of jog your memory about what we read on the previous day, and then we'll jump into some questions. So Percy's relationship with his mom. He's got a great relationship with his mom, right? He loves her, he cares for her, but he worries about upsetting her or making her nervous. So he doesn't always tell her everything. Percy's father, don't get this confused with Smelly Gabe. Okay, this is his real father. He believes that he's seen his father, right? And he just can't understand why his father would have left, knowing that Sally was pregnant, why his father left and then didn't come back. So he kind of has some mixed feelings there. And then this exciting events at the end of the chapter, and then predict what you think will happen next. When at the end of chapter 3, right? Percy is asleep. There's a thunderstorm. He even has a strange dream. And he wakes up to pounding and pounding and pounding on his door. And when he peels open the door, there's Grover standing with no pants on. And where his legs should be, he has hooves, right? So that's kind of the end of our chapter. And then predict what you think will happen next. So as later in a little bit, you're going to have time to read chapter 4. So just kind of be thinking, what do you think is going to happen from here? And then kind of see if you're right as we go. So what we're going to do, kiddos, is I want you to look at that little excerpt that you have that says question 1 at the top. And I want you to answer this question for me. It says, even though Percy promises that Grover can walk him home, he leaves him. What does this tell us about Percy? Why did he leave him? Use text evidence. I want you to notice something here. Okay, we have 2 questions in this little section here. Okay, so what does this tell us about Percy? What that means is, what does the fact that Percy chooses to leave, what does that tell you about Percy? How is he feeling in that moment when he chooses to leave Grover? Think about what he overheard in chapter 2 as you go to answer this question, okay? And what does this tell us about how Percy is feeling in this moment? And then I want you to kind of tell me, why does he leave Grover? Okay, so I want you to look at the excerpt that you should have on your desk, okay? And this is the important part here. As you answer it, I want you to really make sure that you use text evidence, okay? And remember, we should have a sentence stem that starts with in. This takes me a second to get that written out because I'm writing with my fingers on the trackpad here. In the text. I bet you can go ahead and even finish that for me while I'm saying this. In the text, what it said, okay? And then I want you to pull some evidence from the text to support your answers to both of those questions. So remember, you're going to answer 2 questions. What does this tell us about Percy? How's he feeling? Okay? And then you're going to tell me here, why does he leave? Okay? And then I want you to say, in the text it said. So in just a second, the video is going to pause, and I want you to take a second and just make sure that you're really thinking through this question. Okay, kiddos? All right, here we go. Let's look at this one here. So on question 2, okay, we're going to talk about word choice. Now, Rick Riordan is the author of our story, and he has chosen to kind of describe Smelly Gabe using certain words, and then to describe Sally using other words. How does Percy feel about them? Use text evidence, okay? So you have 3 questions here. How does Percy feel about Smelly Gabe? how does Percy feel about Sally? Okay, I guess that's really two questions. Okay, how does Percy feel about them? Just basically saying, how does Percy feel about Sally and Gabe? How does Percy feel about Sally? And then that important piece right here that says use text evidence. Okay, so look through the excerpt that you have that's labeled question 2. How does Percy feel about Smelly Gabe? So think about the word choice. What kinds of words does Percy use when he describes Smelly Gabe? What does that tell us about how Percy feels? So think about you're going to use Percy's thoughts and speech to describe how he feels. And then I want you to look at the words Percy used to describe his mother, Sally, and what that tells us about how Percy feels about her. So you're going to tell me how Percy feels about Smelly Gabe, how Percy feels about Sally, and then you're going to use evidence to back up how Percy feels about Sally, about how Percy feels about Smelly Gabe. Remember, thinking about this word right here, word choice. What words does Percy use to describe them? What does that tell us about how he feels? Okay? All right, so take a second and I want you to answer that question for me. Okay, so let's dig into this next question here. Even though Sally is married to Gabe, she's got mixed feelings about him. What that means is she doesn't, just because she's married to him, she's not in love with him. Okay, so I want you to make an inference here. How does Sally feel about Gabe? And then how do you know? Okay, this is kind of going to be that text evidence piece. All right, so you have one question to answer here. How does Sally feel about Gabe? Then in the text it said, you're going to give me your evidence. So you're going to look on your excerpt page at question 3. You're going to read what's there. And you're going to come back to this question and you're going to answer, how does Sally feel about Gabe? And how do you know? Okay, so I want you to just take a minute, okay, on this next question, and I want you to answer that for me. Okay, let's look at our last question, kiddos. I know that you're giving me great answers. I'm going to be checking these all day today, so you need to make sure that these are good, solid answers, okay? All right, here we go. Percy spends a lot of time being worried about being normal. How does Percy feel about being not normal? And how does his mom feel about Percy being not normal? You have two questions here. So you're going to tell me, how does Percy feel about being not normal? How does Percy's mom feel about Percy not being normal? And then you're going to wrap it up with some text evidence, okay? So you're going to look at question 4, the excerpt that's there, okay? You're going to read through that. You're going to come back to me and you're going to tell me, how does Percy feel about being not normal? How does Percy's mom feel about him being not normal? And then you're going to wrap it up with some evidence, okay? All right, kiddos. So what we are actually going to do is we are going to kind of wrap that up, okay? Make sure that you can go back if you need to before this video is over and really add on to your questions, okay? So you want to make sure that you gave me really good solid answers with good text evidence to support it. I'm going to be checking these, okay? And then I want you to go ahead and make sure you've clicked submit on all of your questions and turn your video in. I'm super, super proud of you guys. You're going to be directed to another video that's going to kind of give you some time to dig into chapter 4, and it's one of my favorite chapters, and answer some questions as you go. If you guys need anything, shoot me a message on Google Classroom. I'm here to help you with whatever you need. Work hard for me, kiddos.